If you've been working with React at all, you know things move fast. And probably the biggest shift we've seen in years, it's the move to functional components. So let's just break it all down, what they are, why they've basically taken over, and what that means for how you're going to build your apps.
See, every single React app is built with components, and for the longest time, you had two choices. The old school, kind of bulky class components, or these newer, much leaner functional components. Now, for years, you had to use classes for anything complex, anything that needed to hold data, but not anymore. The whole community, React itself, has gone all in on functional, and trust me, there are some really, really good reasons why.
So what even is this thing that's now the standard way to do things? The name might sound a little formal, but honestly, the idea behind it couldn't be simpler.
And here it is. At the end of the day, it's just a JavaScript function. That's it. The only real trick is that instead of returning something like a number or a piece of text, it returns JSX, which, let's be honest, looks and feels just like HTML with some JavaScript superpowers baked in. Just look at this little piece of code. See what's missing? There's no class keyword, no render method, none of that extra stuff. It is just a plain old function named greeting, and it's returning a single H1 tag. That's all React needs to see to know, okay, I need to put hello world on the screen. It's that direct.
So really, the main thing to remember is not to overthink it. You write a function, you get a piece of the user interface. It's this beautiful simplicity, this idea of having a clear input and a predictable output. That's a huge reason they've become the standard.
Okay, so if they're so simple, you're probably wondering, why did we ever do it any other way? Well, the switch happened for a few very clear, very powerful reasons. So here's the quick rundown. First, the code you write is just cleaner. You don't have to fight with the this keyword, which, can be a real headache. Second, they're just plain faster and smaller, which means your app loads quicker. Third, and this is the absolute game changer, you get to use hooks. And finally, when you put it all together, your code is just way easier to read, to test, and to come back to 6 months later. But wait a minute, that brings up a huge question. A normal JavaScript function runs, does its job, and then it forgets everything. It has no memory. So if our components are just functions, how in the world can they remember anything? Like, how can a counter remember its count, or a form remember what you typed into it? And the answer? The one big idea that made all of this possible is a feature called hooks. This is what gives our simple little functions all their power. You can think of hooks as special functions that let your components hook into React's core features. They're the bridge that lets a simple function do all the powerful stuff, like managing state, which is really just a fancy word for memory, and all the other things that used to be only possible inside of a class. All right, let's look at the most famous hook of them all. Use state. This single line of code right here, this is doing something that used to be impossible. It's telling React, hey, I need my function to remember something, and in this case, it's a number that's going to start at 0. Let's just quickly break that line down. First, you call useState with a starting value. Here, it's 0. In return, React gives you back two things. A variable, which we're calling count, that always holds the current value, and second, it gives you a function setCount. That's the only way you're allowed to change that value. It's such a clean and predictable way to handle data. And you have to understand, this was the revolution. Before hooks came along, if your component needed to remember anything at all, you had no choice. You had to use a class. Hooks completely tore down that wall and made functional components just as powerful, if not more so. So let's boil it all down. What do you really need to remember? 1. Functional components are the way to go for any new React code you write. They are the standard. 2. They're not scary. They're just JavaScript functions that spit out UI. And 3. Hooks, especially useState, are the secret sauce that gives them the power to remember things and be dynamic. So there you have it. That's the modern blueprint for building with React. It's all about these simple, powerful, functional building blocks. The only real question left is, what are you going to build with them?